All right, people. Hello. Um, needless to say, I am not a expert on infectious disease or any of the scientific aspects of a pandemic. I did not excel, to say the least, in the hard sciences. So I'm not going to even remotely pretend to presume that I can provide you with accurate information as to what is happening with coronavirus, but I can comment on some of the political aspects of this, I suppose. I mean, the last 24 hours or so have just been insane. Now, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, people who I felt were trustworthy were saying, listen, pay attention to this. This is not a joke. This is not something to be laughed off. It's going to get extremely severe. Not just in the places where coronavirus was having significant outbreaks, like Iran, Italy, South Korea, whatever, and obviously China, but in the United States. So prepare for it and don't think that you can just put this out of mind. So I had anticipated that there was going to be an escalation, definitely, but it really still was extremely jarring in the last 24 to 48 hours. It's just like nothing we've ever experienced before, at least I've ever experienced before. I don't think there's been a pandemic of this magnitude, at least as it relates to the US, maybe since the Spanish flu. And that's just crazy to contemplate. I know there was the swine flu in 2009, but from everything I gather, it's almost guaranteed to be exponentially worse. Um, I haven't really gone out all that much. I've seen reports from people who are like driving on the highways or the freeways in Los Angeles who are saying there's no traffic. And it's just like for there to be no traffic on the LA freeways is surreal. Um, I went out briefly today to go to the supermarket, and I figured I'm going to go at a low time or like a time when you're not, when the supermarket doesn't really have a whole lot of action on a weekday. So I went at like, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock. The place was packed. And I went to sort of like the hygiene section, and they're almost entirely out of soap. I was able to get some. I forgot to get toilet paper, although I actually have some here. So you don't need to know what supplies necessarily I have on hand, but it's just weird because like I how would I go out at this point and try to observe the ramifications of this sudden change in our society? Uh, I can't because like you're not supposed to go out. I mean, I'm pretty I don't want to say adventurous, but I'm usually not somebody who is gonna forego any kind of activity as a result of risk. But I wouldn't go on the New York City subway right now. I wouldn't take a bus right now. Um, until we can figure out what the hell is going on, to quote Trump. I mean, so there's a total and complete shutdown on my personal movements at this point. Um, I don't even know that I would go and visit my grandpa right now, who's at home, because I one of the things that makes this so scary is that people are asymptomatic for at least a couple days before they can even be aware that they have the virus. Um, so for the NBA to suspend the season, for the NCAA tournament to just be canceled for Disneyland to shut down, for almost every single college and university it seems like to be shut down. I saw that earlier today, the governor of Ohio announced that all public schools in Ohio are going to be shut down. I would assume that that's going to be the same everywhere. I mean, just think of the magnitude of that disruption. It's unbelievable. Um, so one idea I had earlier today was, um, if people sort of locally or in your neighborhood, if they can't get off of work and they have young children, I think it would be a nice idea to like get together some kind of system where I, who's just like a single adult and I don't have any dependents, I could go and volunteer for a couple hours or something and watch some kids. I know that there are people who immediately assume that you would have creepy motives for that, which I actually find really odious. Like just because 0.00001% of the population has creepy motives with regards to kids, that means nobody should have ever volunteered to do anything with kids anymore. I mean, it's insane. But that's, of course, the reaction you get. Um, I mean, I worked most of the jobs that I had as sort of a teenager and young and early 20s had to do with kids, like summer camp, sports coaching. I was even an umpire in like a town baseball league, if you can believe it, for kids. Um, and I always enjoyed that. So why not? I mean, everybody seems like they're going to have to contribute something here. Um, and I don't know. I'm just following this like everybody else, and it's hard to even really know what to say exactly. Um, I mean, what we're being told to do is engage in this practice called social distancing. And luckily for me, I'm already expert on that. I should give advice on social distancing, and I'm kind of exaggerating. I mean, I do something socially, but most of the time, I'm working from home anyway. I'm telecommuting. I'm actually not commuting anywhere. I just, my workstation is my little desk here with my weird photo or painting or picture in my background. I didn't even put up. It was just there when I moved in, and I just left it. And that's it. So my daily kind of typical routine is already social distancing. So I'm abiding by CDC guidelines, notwithstanding. Um, one thing that you could comment on from, I guess, a political standpoint is that, of course, today Trump decided to drop a few bombs on what are called Iranian-backed militias in retaliation for an attack yesterday on U.S. forces in Iraq. And the perpetrators of that attack were alleged to be these Iranian-backed militias, which could mean anything. We have no independent verification of that. Who knows? But, wow, what a great time to be engaging in warfare with Iran when they're dealing with one of the worst outbreaks of coronavirus. And just a hunch, but I think escalating a state of war during a pandemic is not the best containment strategy. Um, but, when I said that entering into a state of war with Iran when the Soleimani assassination happened was almost inevitably going to have further escalations down the line, because you never know what kind of tit for tat may occur. You never know what incident might transpire, even if it didn't blow up to World War III, which a lot of trolls were sort of mocking me because they were saying, oh, where's the World War III we were promised as a result of the assassination? It's just like, hey, you dope. I never said that World War III was imminent. Maybe some of the random people online did, but I did not. I simply objected to the initiation of an unnecessary state of war between the U.S. and Iran. Because, who knows, a month later, 2 months, something like that, you can go watch my videos at the time. I actually said something to this effect. Who knows what could happen in like 3 months where there could be another unnecessary escalation, and sure enough, we're in a pandemic, and we're escalating with Iran. So, I mean, I feel like the warnings that I sounded at the time of the assassination were 100% warranted. Um, Secondly, what the hell is going on with Trump right now? I mean, I watched his address last night, and I'm not one who fixates on Trump's kind of verbal slippages or his tweets or the characterological aspects of Trump that so many people are obsessed with constantly. None of that really moves me, or usually doesn't. That's something I can compartmentalize and I don't get bogged down in it. But I watched him last night and it seemed just really weird. I mean, he was fumbling his words. He seemed a little out of it. Apparently, he misstated something about banning the movement of goods between the U.S. and Europe, and then he had to correct it on Twitter. Uh, it was like the absolute opposite of what you'd want in terms of reassurance. And sure enough, after uh, the address, the futures market plummeted, and now today we had the sharpest drop in the stock market since 1987. So, I mean, which was Black Monday, which precipitated a recession. Um, so, I mean, if his idea was to calm everybody, then I think he did not succeed. Stock markets are not the real economy, as somebody points out. Yeah, but I mean, obviously, the stock market can be a harbinger of actual broader economic downturn. I mean, that's what happened in 2008. Um, so, why? Do you really think that we're not headed toward a recession here? I mean, obviously, I can't say that with 100% certainty. But think of all the economic activity that has now been terminated. Disneyland shut down. All our elite universities shut down. Um, so many conferences and events. I saw E3, the video game conference, was shut down. Coachella, everything. Um, my dad was even telling me that this like pharmaceutical industry conference that he goes to annually was shut down, and it had been going on for 150 years. It's like one of the industry standard conferences, and it had only been shut down once before. And that was during World War II. So, who's going to be taking flights right now? Who's going to be taking vacations? Who's going to be patronizing small businesses? I mean, this is how could this not be the beginnings of a rather dramatic economic downturn? And so when people run around, when some of these online progressive pundits who are almost wrong about virtually everything, when they make these confident proclamations about how the election in November is going to turn out, do not believe them. Okay? First of all, they're idiots regardless, even if this wasn't happening. But I'm seeing people who are running around saying, Joe Biden can't win. Joe Biden can't win. And these are the same people who like 2 months ago were saying Bernie will win. Bernie will win. I'm not even saying that I want or don't want Joe Biden to win, but to say that you know with any certitude that Joe Biden will not win the election in November, I mean, how sort of delusional do you have to be to pretend as though you have a crystal ball that you can look into and say that you'll know what the outcome is? I mean, the political circumstances that we're in right now are unprecedented. I don't know what the political impact will be of a pandemic with however many deaths. Hundreds of thousands, millions? I don't know. I'm not trying to make anybody fearful, but that's the range of estimates that we're dealing with. I hope it's less. But I'm saying we just don't know how people are going to react to that politically, how it will change the kind of electoral landscape, how it will alter sort of the composition of the voting public. Because remember, the voting, the electorate's already in a huge amount of flux right now, regardless. We've already seen that by the primary results, where you have dramatic increases in turnout in the Democratic primary compared to 2016. That's why Biden's winning. Bernie actually is getting a modest increase in turnout in some places, although he actually got fewer raw votes in Michigan than in 2016. But in some other places, he has gotten an uptick in turnout. The issue for him is that it's being dwarfed overwhelmingly by a huge amount of turnout by voters who are not voting for Bernie. So you're having just increase in turnout across the board, except proportionally, non-Bernie voters are turning out at huge rates. But, the Bernie campaign I just saw today, they said, okay, everybody stop canvassing. So, I mean, the campaign is over, effectively, in the sense that nobody's doing active traditional campaigning anymore. Even Trump had to cancel his rallies. And if Trump was forced finally by his advisors to cancel his rallies, you know that it's serious, because that's sort of like how he draws sustenance from life. So, of course, the Bernie rallies are canceled. The Biden rallies are canceled to the extent those are rallies in the first place. They're more like book club meetings than rallies. But he does have events, and there are no more Biden events with like a wider public. All these TV shows aren't even having studio audiences anymore. I saw baseball spring training was canceled. I'm assuming the baseball season will probably be canceled or at least indefinitely postponed. Broadway's dark tonight. Remember that Goo Goo Dolls song? I mean, but now it's actually literal because Broadway has been suspended. So, like, listen, all this stuff is unprecedented, which is to say you can't predict what the political consequences will be. So, I think Joe Biden can win. And I know it's weird to say that a man undergoing significant cognitive decline and who is regarded as a centrist, although, I mean, I don't even think that's really an apt descriptor for Joe Biden. The way I sort of describe Joe Biden politically is that he tries to stay within the median of the Democratic Party coalition. So if you have one pole in the coalition here and another here, Joe Biden tries to stay here. Maybe with like a tick to the right or two. But he's not a centrist by broader America, by like the if you judge by the entirety of the American political spectrum. Joe Biden's like platform right now is well to the left of what Obama ran on in 2008. So, and that's a function of like the sort of center of gravity in the Democratic Party moving kind of superficially to the left. So he's sort of adapted to that, and that's what he is. I mean, he's interchangeable with what Nancy Pelosi is in terms of his political, in terms of how he situates himself politically. So yeah, a guy undergoing cognitive decline, 77, barely has it together, tells voters that they're full of BS. Upbraided a woman in New Hampshire by calling her a lying pony soldier or whatever that term he used was. And actually, Joe Biden is turning 78 in November. And do you know what the average life expectancy for a man in the United States is? Yeah, it's 78 point something. So we're getting a guy who is, old. I don't know why somebody told me to take a shower. I just took one. And I don't even know why I'm telling you my cleaning habits on a YouTube live stream, because you're interrupting my train of thought as usual. Yeah, so Joe Biden can absolutely win. Or maybe he won't, but I'm saying we have no standing to predict that with any degree of certainty, given the volatility of the pandemic that we're in, given that, who's to say what's going to be going on in a month from now? You know, you don't know, I don't know, so don't pretend to know. And I'm just constantly annoyed by these online progressive pundits who, of course, are pro Bernie and they want to put forward a pro Bernie case still, even though the campaign is over. And so they say, oh, Joe Biden can't win. And okay, maybe that's effective. Maybe you think that's an effective line to pressure people into voting Bernie. It's, first of all, it's not going to work. Second of all, sorry, a text just came in for me that distracted me, which I'll look at after the stream. And again, I'm losing my train of thought. This is why these live streams are so weird, because you have a flood of comments coming in. I get text beaming into my phone from above. The point is, don't make stupid predictions. The online Bernie crowd were not right in their analysis, generally speaking, of this election. So why would they be right about... If they were wrong about the primary, why would they be right about the general election? And that likewise for the MAGA people who are saying, Joe Biden can't win. Dur, 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 dur. How do you know, bitch? Do you have a time machine? Have you transported to November and you're reporting back the news to us here in March? Because otherwise, you sound a lot like the Hillary dead-enders in March of 2016 who were confidently telling me, there's no way Donald Trump can win. Look at the polls, Well, by the way, I mean, Joe Biden has been up in the polls against Trump pretty consistently. And totally effed up the coronavirus response. Then how do you think that's going to be viewed politically? I mean, I honestly don't even know, because it's an unprecedented situation. But I think if the economy's crashing and Trump could have taken actions a month ago or 2 weeks ago to prevent unnecessary deaths and did not, then that's going to be blamed on him. And you know what? He's going to deserve it to some extent. Could he have wiped out single-handedly the coronavirus and, you know, prevented it from getting to the United States at all? I doubt it. You know, but he was pretty substantially downplaying it. More really seemed like it could have been done earlier to build up our, you know, testing capabilities, to stop travel. I mean, Tulsi was putting out videos saying, hey, Trump and Pence, why are we still having flights from Hawaii to Japan and South Korea as of like 2 weeks ago without adequate testing kits? So she was right, but now it's too late to stop those flights. So Trump does this dictate last night where he's canceling all travel to and from Europe. It's just like the amount of disease that we have now in the U.S. is pretty comparable to what they've got in Europe. I mean, the worst case in Europe is Italy, and we're already on a trajectory where stuff is doubling, where the incidence of coronavirus is doubling. I think it's every 4 days. And we're being told that we're only 2 weeks behind Italy. So what's going to happen in 2 weeks? Bill de Blasio said today that he expects there to be thousands of cases in New York City alone by next week. Which, if that's the case, number one, why are New York City schools not closed yet? I mean, we all know that they're going to have to close them eventually, so why not just do it now and prevent some of the spread? So I don't understand why New York City schools are still open. You know, they're canceling entire semesters at Harvard, Princeton, etc. It's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, so in the we have this debate coming up, right, on Sunday between Bernie and Biden. Of course, they're not letting Tulsi in, even though she has 2 delegates and satisfy the debate criteria that the DNC set out ahead of Super Tuesday for eligibility. So she got 2 delegates from American Samoa, but that's not sufficient, of course, because they rigged the rules to exclude her. Shocking, right? Nobody could have anticipated that. But this is being called a debate on Sunday, but they and it was going to be in Arizona, but they canceled that. It's not going to be in Arizona. It's going to be in Washington D.C. I'm not even sure what venue they're going to be using, but there's going to be no live audience. So it's just going to be Joe and Bernie sitting there having a friendly collegial discussion, essentially. And they will be sitting. So it's not going to be a debate. And AOC actually was on Fox News earlier today and gave sort of a preview as to what we can expect. And she says that this debate is going to be about bringing together the Democratic Party or unifying Democrats. So I don't expect Bernie to challenge Biden all that seriously, and there's going to be sort of a somber tenor because of what's going on with coronavirus. So there's going to be even less. It's going to be even seen as like less tolerable for them to really go at each other. And I think what Bernie is going to be doing here is basically just encouraging Biden to adopt certain policy planks that could appeal to Bernie voters. Because, let's face it, Bernie is not going to do anything that compromises Joe Biden's ability to win the general election against Trump. He's just not. That's why Bernie in 2016 endorsed Hillary. That's why Bernie actually entered Hillary's name into nomination at the convention. If you remember that in 2016, you can go watch that extremely awkward and depressing video. And that's why Bernie campaigned for Hillary around the country, even though he never got any credit for it. And it didn't actually redound to his political benefit, apparently. Like, what did Bernie gain from participating in the fake unity efforts in 2016 on behalf of Hillary? He just got a headache. I mean, the Hillary supporters still blame him anyway for causing her to lose. Rachel Maddow was explicit with that when she had Liz Warren on after she dropped out. She was like, oh, the Birdie Bros, they're divisive, they're schismatic, and they're, what word did she use? Factional, and they contributed to Hillary's loss in 2016. Now, I actually think that is true, but the point is, they're still using Bernie's supporters to assign blame to him individually for Hillary's loss. So he's not getting any credit for having, gone with the program in 2016, endorsed Hillary, campaigned for her. Because all the Hillary diehards are still very much hostile toward Bernie now and didn't vote for him in the primaries in great numbers, apparently. And that's the same mindset I'm pretty sure will carry over with Biden. And, I'm sure, and you have to bear in mind that they're former Senate colleagues, Bernie and Joe. And what is the Senate prize above all else, pretty much? Collegiality. You're supposed to get along with your colleagues. You have a sort of ingrained respect for all your colleagues in the Senate. It's sort of just part of the essence of the institution. I think that sort of contributes to why Bernie is reluctant to really go after Biden hard. And to be frank, the delegate deficit at this point, it's almost, it's insurmountable. Bernie lost the state of Washington. Let me look up what the actual margin is now in Washington, because, that is maybe the most brutal loss that Bernie has undergone thus far in the cycle, because if there's anywhere that you would expect Bernie to be racking up delegate counts if he were viable, it would be in the Pacific Northwest, and he's losing the state of Washington. And he won the Washington caucus in 2016 by, get this, 73% to 27%. So it was a absolute blowout for Bernie in Washington in 2016. That's why he's was semi-viable throughout the entire primary, even though he was behind delegate-wise, and that's why he kept going. But Washington, like other states, transitioned to a primary, which is bad for Bernie, which again is ironic, as I've pointed out in previous streams, because Bernie's logic for his candidacy is that he's going to generate huge amounts of turnout. And primaries have much higher turnout than caucuses, and yet Bernie does massively better in caucuses than he does primaries. So, by his own logic, to use that cliche, he should be doing better in the primaries, and he's just not. But yeah, if Biden is winning Washington State, then it's just over. And when I say over, again, let me clarify. Because of these unprecedented political circumstances that we're in, and because of Biden's precarious cognitive state, I'm not going to declare things 100% over because how can we know? I even say there's like a 15% chance that Biden will not be the nominee just because of the utter unpredictability of what's ahead. Now, does that mean Bernie will be the nominee? I don't know. I guess it's possible. He would be the runner up in terms of delegates. But yeah, I mean, so we have to sort of make accommodations for the uncertainty of what may happen in the next weeks and months. Um, yeah. So there you have it. Again, it's just a crazy situation. I don't have anything unique to add scientifically. I did watch the Joe Rogan interview with the infectious disease expert who gave some sort of disturbing information about the transmission of the virus. He essentially said that washing your hands, as we've all been told to do, is not even that effective in stymieing the dissemination of the virus because it's transmitted through the air. I mean, if you have like a droplet or whatever, if you're in the proximity of somebody who sneezes or coughs, then you're breathing in the air. It's in your respiratory system. It doesn't matter. You can wash your hands till you're blue in the face. I can touch my face because I'm freshly cleaned. So I'm not at risk in doing that now. So yeah, I mean, watch that interview if you want information that's more scientifically oriented. I can't really provide that, but I can sort of keep an eye on the political fallout from some of this stuff. Okay, I'm going to read through some super chats here. Michael says, appreciate your insights. Curious on your thoughts on Yang endorsing Biden. Andrew Yang endorsing Joe Biden does seem sort of incongruous on its face. And it was slightly jarring when he announced it on CNN. But then again, I mean, think about it. Joe Biden's just cleaning up all these primaries. He won Michigan by a massive margin. Bernie lost every single county in Michigan. So, if a candidate were that dominant, you would expect them to be progressively endorsed by their rivals, especially if those rivals want to gain some measure of influence with the likely nominee. And I would think that Andrew Yang would appreciate some kind of role potentially within the Biden administration, or even given some kind of surrogate position or whatever. So I mean, it sort of makes sense for Andrew Yang's purposes. Although there were rumors that he may run for mayor of New York City. But if you were to do that, I mean, getting a position in the Biden administration for a year or something would actually be a good launch pad. So I'm not surprised by it necessarily, even though it was a little weird when the news broke. But if you think about it for a minute, it makes sense. Let's see, what else do we have here? Jennifer asks, "What can we do to get Tulsi on the debate stage?" I don't know. Tweet. I mean, the most potent argument is that she satisfied the criteria that the DNC set out for debate eligibility before Super Tuesday. And then, of course, they rigged the rules again and changed it exclusively to bar her from participating. If she wasn't in the race, then they wouldn't have to change the rules. They changed the rules purposely to disadvantage her. So, I mean, that's the strongest argument. Tulsi has perspectives that I think would be extremely valuable to share regarding coronavirus in particular by incorporating the foreign policy elements of the situation. Look at what's happening with Iran, like I mentioned before. Look at the brutal sanctions regimen that we impose on countries around the world that prevents countries from from like Iran from getting the medical supplies that they require to provide adequate hygiene, medicine, and other resources, nutrition. So our foreign policy is actually exacerbating the coronavirus, and I think Tulsi would bring that stuff up if she were in the debate. And I doubt Joe Biden and Bernie are really thinking in those terms about what's